Thank you very much for joining us. Thand'Olwethu Dlanga lo umuntu ngoyongo Malinge undima kaNkumbuzo. He's coming from you live from Ponte Politique on YouTube channel. And as you can see that we're not in our ordinary space, and you are aware that today we had said that we are going to be establishing and starting this conversation at 1:30 instead of the ordinary time that we had accepted and we had agreed upon, which was 6:30. So today we are starting with a Bulhoek Massacre commemorative virtual commemorative program. As many of you might know that igama lami nguThand'Olwethu Dlanga, ngumuntu ngoyengwayo uMalinge undima kaNkumbuzo. If it is for the first time that you've heard or joined our YouTube channel, our YouTube channel is Ponte Politique, and please make sure that you follow us here on Ponte Politique. It's on YouTube, and please, when you get there, ensure that you subscribe to the channel. But also at the same time, there are other interesting and wonderful groups, wonderful platforms with which we're available on. We are available on Twitter at Ponte Politique, on Facebook. We are also available. It is Instagram and TikTok. So in all of these platforms that are social media platforms, we are available. And please inform your friends and your colleagues and all those others who had shown interest in participating or in being part and parcel of this conversation this afternoon, that Thand'Olwethu Dlanga is live on YouTube, and we are going to proceed with our commemorative event. So all of you, make sure that you tell whomever that you are interested. Let us all participate in this conversation about this Bulhoek massacre that occurred about 102 years ago. It will be 102 years tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow is the 24th of May 2023. And the things that we are talking about, or that we will be talking about, will emanate from that particular incident, event, or massacre for some people who like to refer to it. So while we are at this particular moment, I would like, before I can even introduce some of them, the themes with which we are going to be talking about, I want to apologize again for the changing of time, because we had agreed that the time is going to be 6:30. That was the initial agreement. But because of the problems of load shedding, we then opted to change the time, because we knew we could see that we are going to have a serious problem about it. So we had to change the time. So from today onwards, every day up until the last day, we are going to be here at 1:30, irrespective of what is the situation. But 1:30, we are going to be participating and being part of this particular time slot, because it is far more safer. Not safer for everybody, but safer for the presenter and the presenters, in the case that there would be a different presenter. So it is far safer. So I want to ensure that I got all my technical issues right so that we can begin our conversation, because it is important. I want to make sure that on my side, my presentation is going to be clear, and we will be proceeding with the plan of what we have in mind, so that we do not find ourselves in a dire situation. So I just want to make sure that everybody is able to see that we're alive. So what is it that we will be talking about as a way of introduction? Let us play these particular videos, and they will define and they will talk about our thinking. Those are some of the. I thought I should present those 4 videos for a particular reason, because they give an overview of what we were preparing, or what we think we are going to be talking about. Especially the last one, which I think might have influenced the majority of people, and also it had an impact on me as to how I want to be involved in this conversation, which I have been involved in for many years. Many of the people know that I was raised in the church, and therefore on the basis of that, there's a particular interest with which I have into the church. And in last month, in April, there was a trending video of this person in the video that I played. But then, social media, it took out the video, and it went viral. and a large number of people have dealt with the particular video in different ways. And one of the ways was firstly satiric, but also there were those people who were asking serious questions around the issue of that particular video. So it was in twofold, but the the interest in both of these approaches with which how people were looking at this video, there was one that was precisely ridiculing the entirety of things, the entirety of the video, the entirety of the clothing, the traditional, and which is understandable. It's something that is unique, but also at the same time there were those who were contesting on the basis that is this really a church, and then what is it? How did it came about, and for what particular reason? Who were involved, and who are the people that were involved in this particular organization? And for that purpose, it came and dawned into my mind that over the past many years, which the church has existed, and also over now that we have said its 102nd year anniversary of the Bulhoek Massacre, which includes or which implies that the people of the church, the forebears of the persons that you saw in those videos, were killed by the colonial regimes, the colonial regime's government in a place called Bulhoek in Dlanga. And Dlanga is in the Kamastone area, about I think 25 kilometers or 25 to 30 miles from a place called Komani, which means Komani is formerly known as Queenstown. And in me assessing and looking at the questions, responses, at some point some people might have been affected negatively, but there are those like myself who saw an opportunity, because as part and parcel of the people who have took it upon themselves to engage these particular conversations around the Bulhoek massacre and the Bulhoek moment, and as an interesting scholar of history and political history, and a person who loves heritage and engages in heritage studies, historical studies, political studies, philosophy, and all of these elements. As a person who is interested in such, I thought it would be important that maybe let us look at this moment, these satirical videos that have gone through on social media, and maybe take them as an opportunity to teach around, or to share, to share a perspective around Enoch Mgijima, and also the church that he had led, and also the Bulhoek massacre in itself. The second aspect was that there is a municipality that is named after Enoch Mgijima, and Enoch Mgijima has been, as a person, or as a name, let me put it like that, Enoch Mgijima as a name has then become famous for this negativity, the corruption, and the so-called building of a stadium in the Enoch Mgijima municipality, in the Lesseton village or Lesseton location. It's about 10 kilometers away from Komani. It's the so-called stadium was about 10 kilometers away from that Komani area. Now, many of people would only know about the name of Mgijima through that corrupt activity, through that particular process that was immoral, corruptible, corruption-orientated, and nonsensical. And I have raised my objections around that particular thing, and I had raised my objections against the church, which Mgijima led in, about their quietness on speaking around these ills that are happening in the municipality that is named after this great man. Great man for now, up until you make the decision as to whether Enoch Mgijima was a great person or not. So there has been political developments around the Enoch Mgijima municipality, and there has been complaints around the service delivery. And if you go to that part of the world, as I'm in, you would look there and you see that majority of things have collapsed. And fortunately or unfortunately, the citizens at some point they took it upon themselves to say, okay, no, this is not on. Let us excuse me. Let us protest against these ills. So the name of Enoch Mgijima can be known famous for those particular negativities, and I thought it would be proper to share a perspective of who Enoch Mgijima is and why is this important in relation to these political developments and these corrupt activities that took place. It is because one of the things that transpired is that if you look at the people who have who have who have engaged on this particular conversations around the politics of Enoch Mgijima, you would actually find that they have had a serious problem around one, how the mayorship responded to that particular things. Those are political matters. They also have had a problem of how the people in the municipality have therefore engaged in these things wrongfully so. Just I just need to attend to this smaller nyana aspect, which is of importance for me. And if you remember that there is a there's a video or a podcast that we did on the Enoch Mgijima municipality service delivery protests and all of those things. And if you look at that, what we're trying to raise is the context to say there are people who are using certain things against the name of Enoch Mgijima. This important person in our view, which is Enoch Mgijima, there is a problem with which people are using his particular name. There are problems with which people are using this Enoch Mgijima municipality for their own ends. But then the problem is that the name associated with the municipality therefore shifts from a person of high moral ground and also of good standing in society, especially of African people, and lastly, the person who took it upon themselves to ensure that they build and rebuild the black community in that part of the world. But lastly, a person who contested the power hegemony and oppression of the Europeans in Africa just at the period of after World War One. So why is this important? It is important on the basis of this. And I want to repeat this particular video because it is important to me. I want to repeat it. then the question is therefore, we must start it at this point. And what was happening at that church at the time of the video that was taken, or that was recorded, what was taking place at that particular time, because it might help us to resolve the problem of the question as to what was going on. On that day, it was a Passover festival. It was during April. It was the period of it was a feast of unleavened bread. They call it Massacre, AmaSirayeli, and and at the time, kwakusenziwa lento kuthiwa i-bow marching. What are the clothes that they are wearing? The clothes that they are wearing are that they are part and parcel of the uniform, and that uniform also is prescribed in different ways and times. So the uniform itself is worn at different days. So that one that is shorter is worn on the 3rd day, the 4th day, the 5th day, and the 6th day of the 7-day Passover festival. So they've got 7 days in the Passover, or they don't. It is not referred to as an Easter. Now, so on that day itself, they were doing a marching, which is some of the worship procession that are done within the church. The Church of God and Saints of Christ AmaSirayeli, they worship on a Saturday. They are mainly available across the country, but you would find a large number of them concentrated in the Eastern Cape because of that particular Bulhoek massacre, but they are largely concentrated in the Eastern Cape, but you find the others in other parts of the country. But also there is another complexity within it, where you find that even the Church of God and Saints of Christ itself had, because Mgijima draws from William Saunders Crowdy, who had established the church in America, and then the church was transferred to this part of the world where there are other parts, other branches that were here. And then Mgijima joined the church under the establishment of the American prophet William Saunders Crowdy. But then later, there was a disagreement whether it was spiritual, methodological, and processes, and religious. Then the church was then separated into two in South Africa, and then but it remained the Church of God and Saints of Christ. Then there were other group where they left with Mgijima. Hence later the Mgijima the church was then famously known as the Israelites or AmaSirayeli. But then the other one was associated with the name of the Plumbers. And so those are just definitions that I don't think are important for me at this particular moment. So that is the main question that I wanted to deal with. What was happening at the time? And I would like, in the case of any question, if there's a question that is being raised that you feel like I need to address, or something that I need to clarify, so please put your comments on the chat box, because on the chat box we will be able to see the comments, and then from then onwards we can be able to clarify some aspects which are more popular, or which need an important clarification. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to try and do a brief history of the church, and from that point, it will not be an analysis of how we view the church, how we locate Enoch Mgijima, and how we academically engage him, nor even his decisions, even his ways of doing things. I think what is more important for me today is just to give a brief historical background of those moments. I know that there might be some things that might be missing, but that is the idea of what is happening. As I've already said, that in the story of the church, AmaSirayeli, can be drawn all the way to the Americas. There's a book written by Professor Dorman. It talks about the rise of Hebrew Israelism in America. The book, Professor Dorman, The Rise of Hebrew Israelism in America. First chapter there speaks about the Red Sea, and when it talks about the Church of God and Saints of Christ under the establishment of William Saunders Crowdy. I'm raising this book because it is one of the books that were, in my knowledge, was the manuscript to it was given to our past leader of the church, Rabbi Joe August Crowdy Jr., grandfather Abraham. It was given, the manuscript was at least given to him for comments, contributions, and how he perceives that particular book. And therefore, when I was in the States in one Passover, we met the prof, and then I purchased the book from him, and I found it very knowledgeable. So informative, sorry. Now, the book itself does give an understanding of the rise of the church from the United States, and he speaks about it and how it then the church transfers or expands to the African continent. He even mentions the involvement of Enoch Mgijima. But not only Professor Dorman has given us a historicity. There are many other people. You've got another American, I think it's Terry Miller. He has written a book as well. It has got its own problems, but it is still something that you can consider. Terry Miller writing about the Church of God and Saints of Christ. There's also the famous and the person who is regarded as an authority on the history of Enoch Mgijima and the Bulhoek Massacre. And you've got that particular aspect. And he also writes and draws on the history of Mgijima in that book. And also his thesis as well. He does speak about it in his thesis, which I think it did around 1984, 82, 83, 84, somewhere there. Also, he draws about where does Mgijima come from. But also, there are other people, historians of the church, who have had a great knowledge, and some of them, they imparted this knowledge not only to me, but to also others. So the linkage of the Church of God and Saints of Christ is drawn from that particular vintage point of the United States of America. There's a long history in it, and it includes a large number of people. One of those people was an African. He traveled. Let me start here. There was a time when there was a contestation or a need of a particular type of worship in the African communities, African spirituality. The zeitgeist of the period was contesting this European Christianity, this understanding of how to worship God, how to perceive God, how to see certain things, and how certain things are to be done. There was a time when that was very, very critical in the African continent, so much that a large number of people then traveled the world. They influenced. One of those people who was influenced was Reverend Duane, who established the African Methodist Episcopal. Then there was the others. Then there was John Mgijima, who went first to United Kingdom and then to America and met the Church of God and Saints of Christ through Prophet William S. Crowdy. And when the church was then, when he had met the church in the United States of America, he then got involved into the church, rose up the ranks. He became the member of the Presbytery board. I also think that he also became a secretary of the church. Now, in all of these, you can draw that there is a longer history into that. But my focus is going to be on the church, this part of the world, and how then the Bulhoek massacre came to exist. Now, then the church in America had dispatched one person of the name of William Bishop Christian. Bishop Christian was a Jamaican-born African who was then ordained a bishop of Africa, and then he was brought into this part of the continent, and through the Port Elizabeth Harbor, they then entered South Africa, preached the church, and then there was a large number of people who joined the church. And one of those people, or one of the families that got to join the church, is the family of Mutlabanes, the Mutlabanes, the Machakas, and many others in that part of the world. So they joined the church, and the Mutlabanes are known today as Mhlabane in Komane because of the Xhosaization of the Bakwena surname or family name. So the people in the Komane area, Ukomane area, then they Xhosalized the excuse me, they Xhosalized the area. I mean the language itself. So once there was that cohort of people who had joined the church through Christian, then there was a spread of the church around. The person whom you saw there doing the bow march, he is actually the great grandson of the Mutlabane family. So he is the great grandson of the Mutlabane family. So he comes from that family, the person that you saw on that TikTok, on that famous TikTok video. So then then Albert Christian was called to go back to America. Then there was an ordination and a change of leadership. Then John Mgijima, who was a South African, he then came and he became the South African bishop at the particular time. Now, during his reign, then there was another rise of Enoch Mgijima, who was a member of the Wesley Church, evangelist in the Wesley Church, and then he broke away from the church. And then from the church, after breaking away from the church, he then joined the church through a minister by the name of Elder Machaka, who was then Elder Machaka, who was, as I've already said, part of the family members. So Mgijima then joined the church through that. I know that some people then would have a contestation around the issue of joining the church and establishing the church. We can talk about it, but then I put it across that he joined the church because he got baptized through that particular process. Now, after that, then there was a meeting or a decision when now Mgijima, because Mgijima was becoming prior the joining, Mgijima had experienced some provocative spiritual interventions, prophecies. He would say things that would come to pass, but also at the same time, there was this contestation with him in the Wesley Methodist Church. And then, so by the time he joins the church, there was already a large number of people who were followers of him. The first when he broke away from the church, yes, one of the authors who is also coming from the tradition of the church, Utata Umonwabisi Mgulwa. He's from Kamastone area, and he has written a book titled Inkinsela. He's also one of the people that you can consult, one of the sources that you can consult when you want to talk about or you want to learn about Mgijima. So he says in the book, the day it was an Easter service, the day that Mgijima left the Wesley Church, it was in the evening service, and the first people who joined him were the Mgulwa family, and the first place of worship that was organized for the church in Kamastone was the Mgulwa household. So then Mgijima joined the Church of God and Saints of Christ, and later there were disagreements around the 1912, 1913 period. There was disagreements. There was an allegation of fights amongst themselves. Then some people, they disagreed with how Bishop Mgijima was perceiving Enoch Mgijima. Also, they disagreed with Mgijima, and Mgijima disagreed with some of the people that came with John Mgijima, and there was this a lot of disagreement that resulted in the split of the church, if I were to say it like that. Then there was a group that was moving with Mgijima. Then there was a group that was living with the church as organized by Mgijima. But strangely, Mgijima did not move and go back with the church as he had become its bishop. He remained with Mgijima. Now, as years had proceeded and gone forward, then the church was then divided in these two aspects. Earlier, you remember I said then they were known as the Mgijimas or AmaSirayeli, and also they were known as the Plumbers. So the church, therefore, as understood in the Americans, as originated in the Americans, was therefore known as the Plumbers. And then the church, as now being led by Enoch Mgijima, was then known as AmaSirayeli. Now, later again, in the years, there was again a disagreement with Mgijima and Mgijima ended up being excommunicated in the church, but remained again in the church, and Mgijima was the leader of the church. Now, many years around that particular period, this is happening around 1912, 1913, and around 1912, 1913, there are also socio-economic developments around the society of African people in South Africa, but also in the region of the Eastern Cape. One of the most critical and important things that transpired at the time was the adoption and enacting of Land Act, Natives Land Act of 1913, which the famous Sol Plaatje of the South African Native National Congress has written about it, and he said, on one June morning, we woke up as African people as pariahs in the land of our forefathers. And immediately after that, then there was the World War I, and after the World War I, there was this something that was referred to as the plague, and all of these other things that were taking place in that in that time. Now, one of the things that was problematic in that time was that there was this need and this contest of the land around that region. Remember, I said the Native Land Act influences these things, and the church is proceeding. But now, from 1916, 1917, 1918, I'm running through this process. You then realize that there was a problem between the AmaSirayeli as the Africans and the non-AmaSirayeli Africans with the white people, with the government, with the way that the government is doing things. Now, then as the popularity of Enoch Mgijima rises, the popularity of Mgijima rises, and then you find that there are people coming into Thabelanga. Some even stay there, and others get in and get out. There is this, some stay, some they don't, and all of that. And now, then the state, the colonial government, the colonial regime provides, therefore, the provides, therefore, an allocation of land. There's a comment that just came in from Ingonyama, and Ingonyama is asking, is there a history of Shembe like this? I'm not sure, because I haven't. I think there is, but I have not took the time of engaging the Shembe history. But thanks for that. If there's anybody who's got any information about that, please direct us, so we might also be interested and go and look into it. There's also Ubongani Unkopho, ngumtaxi lo, siyazalana. So he talks about, he makes a comment where he says, the history of AmaSirayeli has often been narrated as it is a story of religious fanaticism. And when we grew up, we then came to understand that there was more you can put than the story in the context. I'm not sure if I read it correct. Oh no, sorry, I read something wrong. History of AmaSirayeli has often been narrated as a story of religious fanatics, but as we grew, then there's another point that he makes. He then says then there's often been told as a story of people with religious fanaticism, and when we grew up, we then realized that there's a story. You can put more in context according to your understanding. I think he's asking me a question. Bongani, can you please ask the question, my brother? I'm struggling to get the point that you're putting across there. There's also another comment from Dana Mahoka. It is directed to me. It says, Thando, for this extended explanation, colonialism is based on capitalism, patriarchy, racism, imperialism, white supremacy. White supremacy is supported by false idea that Christianity is Western. Yes, I agree with you that these were the elements with which the colonial government was building on in relation to how it perceived and saw and understood what it was supposed to impose on the African people. Now, once then there was this particular strife of territory. The Union government gave a small portion of land. Now we are in the Kamastone area. In the Kamastone location, they gave a small portion of land to the natives, which were the majority. They gave a bigger portion of land than the first one that they allocated to the white farmers, and then they occupied a bigger land in that area, which was bigger than both the two that I've talked about. Then the colonial government was a minority, was illegitimate, and it had no large number of people. Secondly, the white farmers were also a minority in the area, but then the people who were the majority and who continue to be the majority in Africa are the Africans. But it was the Africans who were then granted a small portion of land, not only in the Cape region, if I were to say in the period, in the Cape colony, but that was the rule, or that was the understanding in the whole of South Africa because of the Natives Land Act. Now, because of these people coming into this part of the Kamastone, joining their church leader, Enoch Mgijima, then there is also the building of houses, the erection of houses. These houses are being erected here, and they are being built in this. And the records of the church of AmaSirayeli states that they asked for permission from the commissioner, if one were to say, of the area, of at least the person. They asked for the permission, and they were granted the permission. What is unclear and what is contested by the colonial archive is that they say yes, they might have asked for for that, but it was for temporary purposes, not for permanent dwelling. So they had given the agreement for temporary dwelling, not necessarily for a full blown permanent stay in the area. But on the other side, AmaSirayeli are disputing that as well. So no, we're given an authority to ensure that we are part and parcel of staying in this. Now, they stayed there in that, and there was a constant back and forth between the colonial government, its proxies, Danisa Kulapa, and they used to call these proxies Ongotoza. There were people who were referred to as Ongotoza in the church. And now these proxies were the representatives of the government coming to Enoch Mgijima and AmaSirayeli to engage them and say, please don't do this, do that, and all of these elements. But in the main, then there was a period when the government could not take it anymore, that there are these particular people who are staying in Dlanga, who are even contesting the removal of themselves in Dlanga. They say God has chosen this place for us to worship. If there is an earthly power that wants to come and destroy us, it must come and it must destroy us here. But if God has chosen us, this is the message of Mgijima, if God has chosen me to represent this particular type of salvation, then it implies that whoever that wants to come can come and destroy us. But we are not fighting. We are not a political movement. We are not interested in all of those things. Now, the colonial government doesn't take this well. Even the people who are sent there, they don't take it. They don't take this well. You would see why I would say they don't take it well when we're doing the analysis in another day of these whole developments. They don't take this well, and then they decide to send. There were two guys who were sent, 2 or 3. In the history of this, I just want to see what is their names to ensure that I don't mention Abandaba wrong. There were a few guys that were sent to Enoch Mgijima to go and talk to him. Their names were Sol Plaiki. No, man, no, it's not these ones. No, I'm sorry. There's men that were sent there. It's not Plaiki. But there was a delegation. We will find that. I just forgot their names. There was a delegation that was sent to Mgijima to say, hey, before stop this thing, man. The colonial government and what. There's rules and all of these elements. But Mgijima stood and said, Dlanga is the place with which our salvation lies on. And God has spoken to me. I'm a prophet of God and I'm sent by God in this way, And then the government could not comprehend this black man engaging them in the way that he was engaging. And the people were there, and there was a complaint around the farmers saying that the people of Mgijima are stealing their sheep, they are giving a strife to their land and all that. So there was this disagreement amongst the government and AmaSirayeli. By the late 1920, there was just a not so good relationship between Mgijima and the white residents, that is the white farmers who were around Dlanga, because now Dlanga or the Bulhoek had been created as a Isxeko, as a city, as a place where AmaSirayeli would stay at. Now, then there was there were certain things that were not taking place. Therefore, one, the white people were not allowed to enter. Two, when there was a claim, there was a claim of stealing of sheep, and there was a disagreement again. Then the police went and wanted to go and arrest these accused, which were AmaSirayeli men who were accused of infringing on the rights of this white Matushek farmer, stole whatever that they were alleged to have stolen. But Mgijima again stood his ground and said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to release this person. First of all, if these people have stolen, Mgijima interprets that in more religious ways. He says, okay, you say you want to arrest these people, but these people are here and they are worshiping, and therefore they have sinned. And if these people have sinned, we must understand them to be like God is going to forgive them, and then God is going to change them. So you're not going to get them, basically. That was the conclusive evidence, or the conclusive statement. You're not going to get them. You're not going to get anyone. So then there was this antagonism that was also taking place between the AmaSirayeli and also the government through these white farmers, and the perception of AmaSirayeli as a fanatic group, or as a political movement, or as a contestation to the colonial authority. These elements and points that I'm talking about, we will analyze them at a later stage. But for now, we're just talking about the summation of this particular history. By 1920 December, there was a constant conversation between the state and the AmaSirayeli, where they were being asked to get out and all of that, and disagreements, and AmaSirayeli like, nope, we're not living here. God has said we must be here, and therefore we are remaining here. So the colonial government cannot take precedence over the word of God. The colonial government cannot take precedence over our salvation. The colonial government also cannot want to isolate us from this particular land which God has pointed us into. So if you want to come and kill us, you can come and kill us. This is the message that goes to the government from Mgijima. In December 2020, there is a strong messaging which we will talk to at a later stage as well. When Mgijima speaks to this delegation of these men who were sent by the government to come and speak to Mgijima, he speaks about how he understands God and his interpretation of salvation, his interpretation of liberation, his interpretation of how these elements of the future, religion, and all that, how he understands them, and how God has presented them to him. Now, there's something that I missed earlier in the earlier years after the establishment of the ANC. Enoch Mgijima had given a message of support to the South African Natives National Congress, and he spoke about that the Congress movement that was established around 1912 in not in Mangaung per se, but there's a part of in Free State. When he said to them, we are involved in the same struggle, but ours is a spiritual one, that is Mgijima, and yours is a physical one, or let's use more a biblical language. There's a celestial and a terrestrial. So there was the other ones were involved in a celestial, the other one were involved in a terrestrial. So he gave that particular messaging to them. He gave it to them, and I think it is important that it must be understood within that dimension. That's why he said he's not a political. The AmaSirayeli are not a political movement, as in his understanding. But he then had given them, the ANC, a message to say we are in the same struggle. And then you will see why this also part becomes important when we're analyzing and engaging Mgijima in another day. and AmaSirayeli. Now, by 1920, there was a clear antagonism between the government and the AmaSirayeli. By February, it's clear that kuzaliwe. By March, April is the time of the Passover. You remember the video that you saw, that guy wearing a short skirt? It was there is that is taking place. It's April, and 1918, 1919, 1920. There's a large number of people who get to Ntabelane. They even stay now. It's no longer, it's strips and pieces of those who leave. There's a large number of people who stay there. And once they stay there, then the place ordinarily is going to be filled with a lot of people because of the allocation of the small aspect of the land. What I do not know, and what we have not engaged, and what I have not seen in the archives, is whether there was a problem around whether there was a problem that is the lodging. You know, when a lot of people are staying in a small place, in a small like they are sardines. What about the health hazards? I've never heard about this particular point, and I've never looked at it. And Dana Mahoka is talking about a point that was being mentioned earlier. She says that that is why Mgijima's church had to be destroyed, and it exposes the revisionist history. We'll talk about these elements, Dana, when we talk Bulhoek Massacre, Enoch Mgijima, and the Bulhoek Commemoration, more scholarly. But thanks for that, and somebody else can engage on these particular issues. Now, I wonder how was the livelihood, but we've never heard. I've spoken to a majority of people. There's never been a concern. Even the white historiographers have never engaged us to say, actually, AmaSirayeli, or they lived and there were some sicknesses and all of these. There was bad behaviors and all of that. You don't find that in the historiography of the Bulhoek massacre. And I think if it is missing, it probably means that they were disciplined people. They were cleaned people. They were clean. They managed and held and kept themselves more healthy, humane, and they lived amongst themselves well. So if there's anybody who or any person who knows if there has been a problem around the lodging of these people, please shout. We've got the next 3 days to talk about it, or we can even post it on the comments. We will interrogate it further. Now, after the Passover, some people don't go back to their homes. Remember now, the people who even joined the church Mgijima of AmaSirayeli, you must understand that though it is located in the Cape region or in the Cape colony at the time, it is not only the people from the Cape colony who are there. That means the Xhosa speaking Africans. Don't think about that. It did not happen in that manner. There were people who were coming from what you refer to now as Limpopo, Pietersburg. There were people, it was Northern Transvaal at the time. There were people who came from areas like in the Greater Transkei. There were people who came from the Ciskei. At the time, there was no Ciskei. You must know, there was no Ciskei, there was no Transkei, but there was people who came from the areas as far as upper of Orange River. There were people who came from different places. So they joined, they came there, and they were part of that. Now, remember I said there's a development, there's a contestation between the government and AmaSirayeli. By that Passover, the colonial government was like, we don't entertain this thing anymore. Again, this Mgijima nonsense must come to an end. And then there was a dispatching of police in the month of May. There was a dispatching of soldiers in the month of May. And then on the 20th, it was like the situation was clear. Mgijima was also clear in his outlook. He never stopped, maintained the consistency that we are not living here. One of the messages that came was that the people who are in the men who are belonging to the AmaSirayeli must move, and they are going to be taken home, or they are going to be distributed to go and work in the mines. The response Yakam Mgijima was like, no, I did not preach for the mines. I did not preach for you to take the people to go and work in the mines. Now, do you see the problems which also he confronted to then say, but these people are saying, we take the land, we then take your cows and sheep, we suffocate your space, and then we then say, we've got actually a job for you so that you can make money. So you see this contestation between the development of capitalism also in the region and the engineering of poverty of Africans in the region, and also the need for this cheap labor by these colonialists by then take the land, take the resources, and then say, we've got a space for you where you can work. So Mgijima says, no, I don't agree with that. These people were brought here not by me, but by God. And if there's anybody who has to go, or who says that they were brought by me, Habatsamai, isicabha sikhona abahambe babuyele ekhaya. Ukuba ukhona umuntu othi ubizwe ngumgijima apha, I paraphrase, makathathe izinto zakhe agoduke. That's what he said. And again, some people left. Unfortunately, also in the historiography of the church, some of these things are not being mentioned. There are people who left, but the majority of people, men, did not leave. They remained. Now, on the 20th, on the days preceding the 24th, which is the day of tomorrow, the day of killing, not the day of dying. Those people did not just die, they were killed. On the day of killing, the days preceding that, there was a large contingent of police, soldiers who positioned themselves in the Dlanga area sorry, to ensure that they have a good view of these so-called renegades of AmaSirayeli. Now, on the day in question, it was the church AmaSirayeli had different times worshiping. It worshipped 4 times in a day. There was a service in the morning at dawn. There was a service that was starting at 9 and 10, between 9 and 10. There was a service that was in the afternoon. There was a service that was in the evening. So in the day, they had these 4 church services that they were engaging in. Now, then the previous day, before the 20th, the colonial government police soldiers had already scattered and positioned themselves in Ntabelanga. Now, the way that Ntabelanga was built was, there was it was encircled, né? It was built around the households. They were built around, but then the entrance was one and the exit was one. And the entrance and exit was manned by men of AmaSirayeli. And at the entrance, there was a something that was written. I saw the picture of that. It written halt. I saw it from Utatuntloko, who, may his soul rest in peace, one of the great influencers of my way of thinking. So I saw that picture. It was written halt, no admittance. So it was at the entrance of the city. I'm saying the city at the entrance. So you would then see men strategically located there. Now, the police did not use the entrance to get into the they used the mountains. They moved within the mountains to come to Ntabelanga. And their initial station was in Queenstown, Ekomani namhlanje, and there in Komani, there are people who say Kuseskwereni, who Kusesekileni, next to ShopRite. That's not a Sekileni, it's a hexagon. there's a Hexagon Square. There was a hotel there. It was called a Hexagon Hotel. The leadership of the colonial army was in that hotel at the square in Queenstown. So at that particular hotel, the agreement as to when to dispatch, how, what is going to happen, and all of that was agreed there. And they agreed that we are going to cut the land. I'm sure you would remember in the Americana, the pre-Americana massacre, there was a commissioner of police who said, "This is a cut the land." So even then, in 1921, there was that the Colonel Trooters of this world, excuse me, the Colonel Trooters of this world, but they agreed this is a cut the land. So by the time they went there, it was clear that they were going to put down AmaSirayeli. Now, on the contestation of AmaSirayeli, there was readings and writings that were written by white people, journalists, historiographers, history writers, colonialists, and one of the written work was written in the Daily Representative, a paper of the area. It said, and it claimed that AmaSirayeli said they are not going to get out of Thand'Olwethu because they believe that the firearms of the colonial regime's army are going to turn, instead of producing bullets, they are going to produce water. This has been the same propaganda that has been used against all the many other massacres against the African people. So that was also there in the 1920s. It might have been the start, or it might have been something that was then later adopted. So on the 24th, look, today is the 23rd. Ne? On the 23rd, there was an all-nighter in the AmaSirayeli church. And then on the 24th, the following morning, there was a morning service. And during that morning service, during that day, Enoch Mgijima had asked the men to go and wear those short clothing. Remember the video that I was talking about? The video that I showed you about TikTok? They wore that particular uniform. Now that uniform, in its traditional or in its classic sense, it is white. It is not creamish. It is it produces a glaring white reflection. So it is clear. Now, when Mgijima had asked these men to change to that particular uniform, he said, "I want you to be reflective, but also at the same time, this is the uniform of heroes. So we clear now today, but it's going to come down." Now, AmaSirayeli, there has always been this perception that AmaSirayeli, on the day in question, were just shot and massacred. I disagree with that view. AmaSirayeli had created formations, military formations, that they thought they were going to be able to fight back. So they had created those military formations. They were not killed just merely because they were just standing there and they were massacred. No. There was an intention to fight against the colonial army. Unfortunately, the unjust firepower of the colonialists eliminated a large number of them. And it is for this reason that I always argue against the massacring of the AmaSirayeli, to say that they were massacred. I always, again, we will talk about it at a later stage. So on the 24th of May, Mgijima pled with his men. He created different regiments. There was an older man regiment, there was a younger man regiment, middle-aged regiment, and all of that to confront. Remember earlier, the confrontation probably was not clear, but this time around, like, we're going for this thing. Within the uniforms, AmaSirayeli, they had what they call knobkerries, like swords. In my church, when I went in the States, I've seen how the representation of the sweats. I've seen it when I was in the US, with those sweats and all that. Now, then there were different regiments that were put, and these regiments, and then there was also the negotiators, or the perceived negotiators, but there was no negotiation. Now, they went, or earlier I said, the churches, the city is built, the houses are built around, and in the center of this city, there is the tabernacle, the place of worship. So everybody, if you get out and you go into the center of the city, there is the tabernacle. So everybody on the day, in that particular morning, they came into, everybody besides men, just women and children. They were in the tent, worshiping and doing whatever that was being done. And then the regiments were outside, who are going to now confront, or they're going to see how far is the colonialist army going to take them. Now, inside the tent, the place of worship, they were worshiping. They were singing songs of praise, believing in whatever that is inevitable, and they had accepted the situation. Now, outside, then the colonial regime, it is recorded in the church historiography and in the archives of the church that at 12 midday, the church normally prays. We pray at 12 midday. It's part and parcel of the religiosity of the church, practice and methods of worshiping in a church. Now, at 12 midday, in the tabernacle, the people were praying. Also outside, the regiments, 12, everybody knows, 12 o'clock, they were praying. Where is Mgijima in all of this? Mgijima was standing in a place where I remember Utatu Ntloko showing me this. It says, Uba Umlindi was standing there. If you go to Ndabela, it will be clear where he was wearing a red robe. Now, if you look at a person who wears a red robe and the persons who are wearing white clothing, it's clear that during the day you can see, okay, because of the color of the red, you can see it. And also during the people who are wearing the lighter robes, the ones that I was talking about in the video of TikTok, also they themselves, they were easily reflected. So you would not want to not see them. But then there was a person who is a brother of Mgijima. He was the lieutenant or the commanding officer of these regiments. His name was Charles Mgijima. He served a prison term with Mgijima in the same prison. And I think they were seen as the instigators, Mgijima as the primary, and then his brother as the secondary instigator. At the time, when all of this thing is happening with the regiments, he is using a horse, riding between these men, AmaSirayeli, sithi-ke engqiyaza ngesixhosa sithi engqiyaza ngaphakathi kwalamabutho akwaSirayeli, ewamisa kakuhle alungiselele imfazwe umsindozayo. AmaSirayeli would refer to that as umsindozayo. Now, engqiyaza, the historiography of the church also states that the horse itself was sweating because of the amount of movement that it was doing on the day in question. Now, there was 12 o'clock, and at 12 o'clock, they started to pray. There was a clear demarcation to say, we're not living, you rather take us out here dead. And the white people, the colonialists were like, we're not also living here, we're going to destroy what you are doing here. 12 o'clock, a few minutes after 12 o'clock, then there was a shooting. Some people who were in some regiments at the time, they were not approaching. They were shot while they were still sitting. In the historiography of the church, there is that some people were shot while they were sitting, some people were shot while approaching, some people were then shot, and the danger or the most fatal shots were done or were shot at by a Maxim firearm. We'll talk about the Maxim firearm as well when we analyze at a later stage. They were killed by a Maxim firearm, but a Maxim firearm is that machine that was prominent at just after World War One. It was one of the superior gun powers the Europeans had developed around that particular period. And your ABC it was in an automatic. So it even in the shooting itself, it did not take long before the regiments of AmaSirayeli were killed because of its strength, power, and technology. Now, within these regiments, there was a regiment of younger people. Then there was a killing. As then the killing was taking place, the people inside the tent, the place where they are worshiping, they still continue with the worshiping, and people are being killed on the other side, outside of the tent. After some time, then there was an instruction to take out a white cloth to go and assess. Remember, this is what we are told, that there was an assessment to take out the white cloth, and like the military science states that when the other party is giving out a signal of white cloth, it means they want to negotiate or they want to talk. So then there was that view to say, go, we want to check our injured. And here Mgijima gives this instruction, and Charles Mgijima also gives this instruction. We want to assess our warriors. We want to see how bad are they. We are not giving up. We want to assess them. This proves that they were also understanding that no, we're in a fight. We are, but one way to say probably conventional war, those conventional war tactics. No, we are going to fight, but we want to assess. The assessment proved that this was fatal. It was bad. Now, once they given up, once the AmaSirayeli had given up to sue because they have seen that, hey, this is bad, people have died. They then the colonial regime police and soldiers went around to assess some of these people. When they were assessing them, they had rifles with a sword on the top. So if the person is still there, they would then finish them and kill them with that bayonet, and all that. In all of these processes or this fight, there is only one known assault made by the AmaSirayeli. I think it was made to a soldier that was injured, that is the colonial soldier, and their horse. I think that's the only part of that was the assault. Now, one of the peoples that the police were looking for in there was one Philip Mgijima. Philip Mgijima, you will remember I spoke to you. I said about the person who was the TikTok video. The TikTok video, ne? The TikTok video. I said it's a great grandson of the Mgijima family. And also, when the church was splitting at the time in the earlier years, there was a Charles Mgijima who did not go with the Mgijima group, but then his brother Philip Mgijima had. That's why you are able to see that guy there as a great grandson of the Mgijima in the Mgijima group. So, the police were looking for this person by the name Philip Mgijima, and they found him injured, shot and injured, not yet dead. And then the police asked, who is Philip Mgijima? They were looking, are you Philip Mgijima? I feel they kept on looking around for those who were still alive. Are you Philip Mgijima? Are you Philip Mgijima? And once they arrived to the real Philip Mgijima said, yes, I am Philip Mgijima, and they killed him on the spot. So that's how prominent that Mutlabane person was in that issue. But then the brother to Philip Mutlabane, who had not gone with the Mgijima group, he became the evangelist at large of the church, which has not gone with, that is not the plumbers. He became an evangelist at large in that part of the church, up until he then died in later years. And also his remains are unknown as to what happened to him, because he moved from Ekhini to preach. The historiography of the church also says that he moved to Ekhini to go and preach and engage and spread the gospel around the KwaZulu area, and then he died there. Nobody knows what happened to his remains. So this Mutlabane family in the Mgijima, in the church in its entirety, has got a prominent history. And it is not a coincidence that a Mutlabane descendant becomes the one that is causing a viral video on the social media. I'm saying that as a joke. I'm not giving people any ideas about what I just said. I'm saying it as a joke. Now, when then the people were killed, when people were dead, then there was arrests that were made, and then there were people who were because now people are dead. Remember, there was a group of younger regiment, younger men, and then there was other. So the colonial soldiers, they burned the city, they took down everything, burned the place of worship. Then they dug, with the help of AmaSirayeli, they dug 2 mass graves. The first one is the one that when the government and the ANC went to do a centenary celebration, or centenary commemoration, in Bulhoek. There's a big grave there. If you go on the internet, also you will see, when you punch Bulhoek Massacre heritage site, you will see there's a monument. There is a mass grave there. That is one mass grave, and then there's another one where the younger generation, the younger regiment, was then placed on. It is just across the road. If you know in Dlanga, and there's a road, there's it on the other side. And it has not gotten much prominence, that particular mass grave. I don't know why, but I think because of the location with which it is at. So the mass grave with which they are at, the people, it was one, and then there was another one. Then the colonialists even took the Ugwazela. There was a man by the name of Ugwazela. They took him and they brought him in. They said, "Pray for your people who are dead. Pray for them." And then they prayed for them, and then they closed that shallow mass grave. And everybody who was not from who Whittlesea and every other place, was then taken as spoils of war, and victims arrested. Some others were arrested. The women and children were then taken to Komani, Queenstown at the time, and then they were just displaced in Queenstown. Now, why therefore there's a greater concentration of AmaSirayeli in Queenstown? It is because of that. They are the result of the aftermath of the Bulhoek. However, there are some people who had then returned home, decided to go home. But also, you have to ask me, do you want to tell me that there were no other people who ran away? Yes, there were people who ran away from that confrontation from the AmaSirayeli group. Some people ran away and decided, like, Tina, we're not going to confront this. There is also now a propaganda that was has grown around the Bulhoek massacre, that Mgijima ran away and went and wore a dress, and he hid himself under the women who were not then arrested. So he was found there. But the church historiography states that Mgijima was arrested in his house, and when he was arrested, he was in his house waiting, and then he was arrested there. Probably the reason why it is said that he was wearing a dress, it would probably the misconception of the short clothes that other people were wearing. You never know, but the church historiography says that he was arrested in his house. Now, after the arrests, when everybody else, the soldiers and they took everybody else, burnt the city down, destroyed everything, arrested, and took people and threw them in Komani. And there in Komani, there was the starting of a trial in a next few days. Then I know Tembeka Nkaitobi, advocate, speaks about this trial when we were in a 100th centenary symposium. He speaks about this trial and all these other things. So the people, therefore, who were victims, who had their husband, children murdered and killed or arrested, they were then just thrown in command. How do they come about? Now, for many years, therefore, they struggled amongst themselves, but then they kept the faith. After they kept their faith, after the trial itself, then Mgijima was then sentenced to a few years in Kimberly, hard labor with his brother, and the other guys were also sentenced to other closer prison sentences, shorter than Enoch Mgijima. And then Enoch Mgijima was released later in the years, and then he died in 1928. His brother, however, he died in prison. He did not come out. Now, this is the summation. It's not the entirety of it. There are some elements that were missing, that might be also missing, but this is the summation of how the day itself came about. And the day is on the 24th of May 1921, and tomorrow it is that particular day. And on the day, AmaSirayeli, they normally have Lendokutwa Inzila, a fast to remember and commemorate that in various places and in their various tabernacles. And now, how did this church uniform come about? It is said that the church historiography, again, it says that Mgijima had a vision, and then he decided, then this is the vision, this is the uniform, and then we must wear this particular uniform. Now, that is the end of what I'm going to speak about today, and I hope that it was it gives a summation as to why is this what is this church, how did it come about, and the uniform itself. And I mentioned that when you were asking about this uniform, this church uniform, there was I see that there's somebody who says a great lecture, Comrade Solani. Thanks, Comrade Solani, for that input. We are going to continue with this thing tomorrow, but the short clothing is called the heroes clothing, and I think the name might have emanated after the massacre itself. So this is the summation of the topic: how did the church came about, and the uniform itself, and what was the contestation, what led to the Bulhoek massacre. I might have not spoken extensively of everything, but these are some of the things that had led to this. The idea was to give a summation of what is this church, but this is not the entirety of it. If we have to engage on it further, we can. Let's meet again tomorrow at 1:30. We are going to further now engage with other people, hopefully with other people, or they are going to present themselves. I am still going to make an analysis of the how I perceive now academically or intellectually the Enoch Mgijima, AmaSirayeli, and the Bulhoek massacre. Thank you for joining us, and I appreciate your time. And I'm going to close with this video. Bye bye. Keep on following us for this week's commemoration. Thank you very much.